Welcome back, everybody. It's DestinysJesus here. In today's video, I've got a very useful video for you guys, which is going to be 3 levels of the Placement Cup. Doesn't matter if you guys didn't actually do too well in the Placement Cup, let's say you didn't make it out of opens, or you didn't actually qualify and get into Challenger, or let's say you're in Challenger and you want to be qualifying for Elite and getting your earnings up, or you're in Elite and you want to learn how to make consistent finals and learn from the best duos. This is going to be the video for you guys. So for our pro duo, of course, I'm looking at the best, which is Malibuca and th0masHD. Really excited to see how this duo performs this season. These guys are absolutely crazy. They're pretty much mastered the meta. We're looking at a whole load of things from them. Basically, a whole load of tips and tricks that you guys can learn. How to fight defensively, how to fight offensively. Some useful things for tempo, mid-game rotates, and of course, end game as well, which these guys have done really well. Then for our semi-pro team, we're looking at Icy and Rudolph. These guys got 153rd, so they actually managed to qualify into the division. And the reason I chose these guys is I've known Rudolph for a while. They didn't actually manage to qualify for Elite last season. He's basically stuck in Challenger for the whole of the season. And now he's finally managed to qualify for Elite. So this is kind of a perfect level team to look at. Looking at some things with how to use the forecast perk as well. And then for our beginner level team, we're looking at teir and Tsunami. These guys, as you can see here, had a lot of issues of Osborne, shall we take a look at. If you guys don't know how to drop Osborne, or you don't have to make a drop up, I'm going to have some things to cover for that. And also a couple of things like surge management as well, which you guys might be struggling with, especially in these more stacked cups that are going to be coming up. Basically, I hope you guys enjoy this video. I'm laying it out with early game stuff, mid game stuff, and then some end game stuff. So it's all sort of structured for you guys, and you can just skip around to what part of the video you want to watch. For our beginner level players, this is something very important for you guys. It's not just about having the best drop map. I see so many people paying for a drop map. They pay like 20 quid or something ridiculous for just a single drop map, like a picture of a drop map, which makes absolutely no sense to me. When the biggest thing is they don't know how to drop. So as you can see here from the bus pass, let's say, just for example here, the marker they're aiming for this POI over here, the marker is by this tree, right? That's where they're aiming for. You're going to put your marker down and then jump as the numbers start to slow down. However, as you can see here from these guys, is the team that's outdropping them, which is these pink players, they're dropping a lot closer to that marker. He's dropping too late and his teammate here is dropping too early, which means as we speed this up, he's actually going further behind because he's got further to travel, and he's also jumping later, so he's got a lot further to travel. Also, one thing is he's moving sideways. You can see his shoulders dipping and stuff. As he's moving, he's angling instead of just using his mouse to actually go ahead and line himself up. He's using his A and D, which slows you down as well. This is one thing why controller players aren't as good at dropping. So you have a stick drift and it slows them down slightly. Also, another big thing with how he's dropping in here is he's actually going ahead and looking up and down. You basically just want to look at one straight level that gives you the maximum speed rather than going up and down, because obviously if you're too flat, you don't go in the faster dive animation. So then the other team actually gets way ahead of him here. As you can see, he's forced to swerve off, and this happened quite a few games. It's not just about the quality of the drop map that you have, it's more so about how you actually drop in most cases. If you do want to learn how to make a proper drop map and also some more tips for dropping in, I've seen some ridiculous stuff like coaches trying to charge people $80 to teach them how to drop, which makes absolutely no sense to me. I have a 5-minute video on the Duos Masterclass that you guys can go ahead and watch. It'll teach you how to make a perfect drop map and also how to drop perfectly as well, for basically any spot on the map. For our semi-pro duo, we've got Icy and Rudolph. I'm pretty sure Rudolph for most of last season was stuck in Challenger, so he couldn't get into Elite Division. Obviously, you had to qualify from top 15, which is very hard to do. So he's managed to qualify here, get 150th roughly in the opens, and their Osborne is very good, and their mid-game as well is pretty good as well. So you can see here, they land up on the O-Fran chest, immediately goes ahead and aggresses, and makes a nice play here to not actually run into the box. It's a nice edit where the guy's forced to spray through, it's a bit panicked, and there's no Brighton peak without throwing, and they both go ahead and get this thirst here, and immediately start looking for surge on the other teams near them. Surge management is really important in the current meta. It's very crucial that you have good surge management, and also that you get your surge early, because the thing is with forecasters, it's very hard to get surge later on, because everyone's just boxed up waiting zones. Let's take a look at what these guys do for mid-game, which I think is very good and very smart, and a lot of teams should be copying, because it is really effective with sort of counterplaying forecast and also using forecast to your advantage. For our pro duo of th0masHD and Malibuca, these guys are landing over here at a split drop on the far right hand side of the map. And honestly, this season, split drops are way better than most of the POIs. The issue with playing a POI is that you have to have the best drop. You're going to be contested pretty much every single game. And oftentimes, especially at this pro level, you're going to be in an ego fight with another team in the finals contesting the same POI, which obviously didn't go too well for Malibuca and th0masHD last season when they were contested by Tyson and Chapix. But now they're uncontested. They can pretty much always have this uncontested. And of course, they get a lot of opportunities to third party and take mid-game fights, which is what we'll look at next. So for our pro duo, even though these guys haven't been playing with each other for too long, they still have a really good understanding of the basics of duo fighting, and also something very important, which is fight tempo, basically just how the fight is going. So you can see here, Mali gets beamed for 100, takes kind of a bad boom fight, gets cracked, and he doesn't go ahead and try to heal up, he immediately looks for counter damage. A lot of the times people get put in a situation where they get pumped hard or they get beamed hard, and they just box up and immediately just go on the counter foot and start playing defensively, build like a 2x1, waste all their metal or whatever. Instead, Malibuca, obviously a very good player, immediately looks for the other player flanking him, just like this. And while he's been doing this, DestinysJesus's been sneaking up, and he actually sneaks up on DKS and gets hype from him. And immediately here, what could they do? They both could go ahead and drop down, and DestinysJesus could start smacking on DKS's wall. However, the issue with that is that the other player, especially in this current meta, could easily hammer over, and then he'd be in a 1v2, and Malibuca would split over hits. And instead, they control the fight, they slow down the tempo of what is actually happening in terms of how the fight is going and how it's progressing. Thomas just sits up on height, waits for other players to make a mistake. Malibuca just sits on height and starts healing, waits for the player to make a mistake as well. And as you can see, DKS, or Chips here in this case, actually goes ahead and shockwave hammers over at the same time as his teammate goes up. A little bit split from these guys, and they actually get that opening knock. And then from here, DestinysJesus just does some really nice play where he sits on top, baits out with a pickaxe swing there. You can see Socha's pickaxe, swaps back, gets a nice chunk, and now Malibuca impulses over. Impulse is very underrated this season, gets over and easily wipes him up. Again, just because you're on the front foot with a beam, or you get a bit flank with an opportunity for you to 1v2, don't just hop straight into it. Instead, slow the fight down, control the tempo, and especially here, you can see they've got a little bit of whites, and they also probably have the angler perk as well. They can definitely play in Storm and actually force this into a longer fight if they need. Wait for the other team to make a mistake is much better than trying to force that mistake to come out for them. Okay, so we just looked at how Malibuca and DestinysJesus deal with slowing down the tempo of a fight when obviously they're in the advantage. They both have high ground. Let's take a look at an example of a fight where on the back foot immediately. So you can see here, they get 3-2-1 by a pro team. Chapix and Ziandi, 3-2-1 Zian. Malibuca can actually get a good amount of damage on him. What does DestinysJesus do? Immediately, he realizes he can't just box up with Malibuca. That could lead him to getting pinched very easily. He immediately just goes ahead and tries to get some damage on the other team by actually taking that fight straight away. It's a very nice play here, which I think is quite underrated, which is basically just running around like a drone, in this case, and waiting for the other person to try and get a little bit too piece. He runs around, good movement, good crosshair placement, gets that tag on Ziandi. He wasn't really tracking where he was, and then now Ziandi's forced to back away. And let's go over to Malibuca here, as he absolutely destroys Chapix. He goes ahead and uses his builds to get up. He realizes he had to go over and help Ziandi, his teammate. Gets that tag on him right there. And then there's a very useful trick that you can do, which is as you break builds in a second here, with the left click with a hammer, go ahead and open up your inventory and drop it. This is actually quite easy to do as well on controller. Obviously, if your keyboard is pretty easy to do as well, just open up and then press X, and it will drop the item they're actually using, or press E, and it will drop the item you're using, drops it, gets the wall on Chapix, absolutely looking like a fish here, and then gets the very nice kill. And immediately he goes over, DestinysJesus slows down what he's doing in the fight, he goes over, and they go ahead and pinch Ziandi, who's basically completely stuck here. One very nice thing that did in this fight is when he's sitting up on height like this, they don't decide to go ahead and build fight him. They wait for the other teams to help them and do the work. They both heal up. You see, they're not actually build fighting him, they're just going ahead and spraying him, and then now they both get walls from different sides and take him out very easily. This is a really useful tip that you guys might not know, is you can actually save your augments for later in the game, and especially if you save an augment that is the jelly angler, which means that you always, whatever body of water you're next to, you always just get jellyfish from it. Instead of doing that early game, which maybe you want to do if you want to play Storm or sit back and play Dead Side, or really far Dead Side, I wouldn't really recommend that. But instead you can save actually picking that perk, so when you do pick it, which is what Malibuca does here, is he goes ahead and picks the perk instead of wasting their heals in a second. You actually get given a fishing rod, so you don't need to be next to a fishing rod. You also don't need to carry around a fishing rod if you chose the perk earlier. You can just save it as your augment, pick it, get given a fishing rod by Fortnite, and then you can go ahead and fish and save all of your heals. This is really useful to do if you're ever in a shambles spot, or let's say you just don't even want to waste a big, just do this, and you have a couple extra jellyfish that you can use for your rotate. You can throw them forward, so as you rotate into zone. However, just be aware that you don't want to get caught fishing. So always try to do it when you're in a pretty safe spot. So you can see here, they both just popped the jellyfish, and now they're both 200 HP without wasting any of their splashes, and they're absolutely stacked going into endgame. For our semi-pros, these guys mid-game was actually pretty solid in the games I've watched. One thing with forecasts, I see a lot of people making a mistake of, is they're basically just playing the entire game based on what forecast tells them, which I think is sort of wrong. You can actually play a very solid game, and hopefully you guys should learn how to predict zones, and you should know some zone fundamentals from playing in the previous 3 chapters without forecast. So you shouldn't just be solely reliant on forecast telling you where to rotate and when to rotate, which is the most crucial thing. If you just wait for forecast to show up and see where 4th zone is or see where 50-50 zone is, you'll be rotating with a lot of other people, and a lot of other people are going to be using that information against you. Like teams that are already boxed up are going to be shooting you. So in this case, these guys have rotated very early with forecast on 2nd zone, so they can see 3rd zones down here, and they get dead center on 3rd zone, which is really good. Of course, if you're dead center of any type of zone, it means you're guaranteed to get the next zone, and 3rd zone is really important because it means you get that guaranteed 4th zone, so it's a lot more congested, about 50 teams boxed up. You don't have to move at all. Instead, you can just simply stay in your box and not waste any heals, which is really important. And it also means you've got a high chance of getting 50-50 just because of how the zone mechanics work in the current state of the game. Just that simple change, instead of relying on forecast to show up and then going where zone is, let's say boxing up edge 3rd on a mountain, let's say, which might be a good play. Instead, try to go center 3rd with forecast very, very early. And that means from about 30 minutes into the game, these guys literally haven't moved their box until about 20 minutes in the game as they're coming into endgame. They get a very close 50-50 zone, as you can see here, and they're still in the exact same box. Their mats are still very good, and they haven't wasted any of their heals as well. Alright, just quickly, this is a very important concept that you guys need to learn, is that there's not really a typical dead side anymore because of how the map has changed. Obviously, there's 50% less chests roughly. It's a lot less to loot on the map, so teams are forced into split drops, and a lot of times forced into landing on the edge of the map. So now have a take a look in the middle here, from around Shattered Slabs upwards towards this gas station, outside of Forest Bits above Frenzy Fields, below Animal Square. There's giant center of the map right here. It is very, very dead, and it stays very, very dead for most of the mid game as well. So typically there'll be a dead side. However, because most teams are running the forecast perk, as we skip a little bit later into this game, you'll see what I mean. Most teams are running the forecast perk. They know where Storm is going to be next, and they rotate dead side to get there, or they rotate very early. You get this very large dead inside area right here, as you can see, where it's very, very empty. And all these teams that are rotating towards dead side, you can obviously tell where Storm's going to go just based on where everyone's boxing out the forecast perk. And this means you can get very nice rotates, like what Malibuca and Th0masHD are doing here. Also bear in mind they did actually kill 2 teams on the right hand side, so it's a little bit more dead than usual. And they get a very nice rotate where they can come in late. There's basically no one that can hold them. That all the teams that are boxed up have the forecast perk and a box up in the next zone. So it basically just changes to the dynamic of how the zones actually work entirely, and how rotates, especially mid game rotates, change as well. Something very important to be aware of as you're idling and as you're rotating. There's a lot more mobility in the map. The map is a lot smaller. Teams are going to be a lot more advanced positions. There's not as many choke points compared to previous seasons. Okay, so one of the big mistakes that a beginner duo made is their surge management isn't where it needs to be. Surge, especially in the current meta of forecast, it's very hard to get surge tags this late into the game unless you go aggressive. These guys make the mistake of just sitting passively boxed up for a long period of time. Then they realize they're below surge. Everyone else around them is boxed up, all their hammer rotating in late, so they can't get any tags. And as soon as you're below surge like this, before it even shows up, if you just see you're like 100 below surge, just go in aggressively, get on someone's wall, whack on a pre-edit, try to do a trade pump. It's always better than waiting for surge to tick, because at this point they're getting spread from different angles and they're going to go ahead and go down. Surge this season isn't too hard in my opinion. You just need to make sure that you get tags early, and of course these guys swerving off their drop spot as well isn't helping at all, means they get no early surge and they're forced to play a little bit more shambles than they'd otherwise have to. And as you can see, they go down, basically play the entire game out for 5 points, which isn't ideal. Alright, let's take a look at the semi-pros in the in-game, and this is a big mistake that I see a lot of teams making when it comes to rotates, especially with forecast. So with forecast and moving zones, you know where the next zone is going to pull. Let's say in this case here, you see that zone is going to pull up north, down south. It's really good to be further forward ahead of these other teams. Let's say you rotate a little bit late, and then you get ahead, and that means that you have dead side, so you can use dead side hammer low ground rotates for free basically if it pulls like that. The zone is pulling back, of course. You don't want to be rotating too far. You want to try to position yourself directly on edge so if it pulls back. And this zone, as you can see, is pulling far again over towards this west hand side, over to the left here. That means that again you want to be on this other side early so you can look back for refreshes and all these teams that can be coming late. Now you can see these guys make a big mistake. They're sort of indecisive about what they do. They're sort of in zone here. They know zone is actually going to pull 5 to the left, but they make a big mistake. First of all, is they box up an end zone, very good. The big mistake here is looking for a refresh on backside. This is something you should absolutely never do, is looking for a refresh ahead of you into other teams that can potentially hold you. And you can see here, Rudolph goes ahead and does a nice little right and peek, sort of does catch these guys unaware for the first bit, but then he decides to take the angel, which is really bad decision making on the other guy, and almost dies there. And then, as you can see, zone pulls far. They go ahead and hammer out their box. Again, 100%, one of them should have died here. There's some other teams are looking, or that team was looking that just shot him. They should have died here. They're in the open for about a second, going ahead and hammering. You should always hammer from inside your box. And you can see they get very split, and it gets very scuffed. They knew zone was going to pull over here. They should have tried to at least rotate early. Imagine they were, let's say, where this team is now. They preemptively hammer rotated. They got boxed up here. Imagine how many kills they could have got. They could have easily been themselves rotating late. They could have easily got a kill on that guy just running in the open. This guy just running in the open with absolutely no mats. They could have got all these kills, potential refreshes on boxing people as well that are coming near them, and then they could have continued to hammer rotate forward. One big thing that people are struggling this season is choosing a layer to play during endgame, and I think personally the best thing that you can be doing is playing sort of 1 or 2 off low ground, and then trying to claim low ground towards the end of moving zones. You can see here DestinysJesus and Malibuca. The issue with playing a high mid ground layer, or just let's say above a team that's tarping, is stuff like this can happen where someone just goes ahead and just shockwave hammers and end up straight in your box. Luckily, DestinysJesus kills him quite easily. So what he does is actually go ahead and regroup Malibuca, drops down, goes the whole way down to low ground. They're not wasting time by playing mid ground layers and full tarping forward. They're actually climbing low ground and actually getting a lot of kills from it during these end games. Also, one thing that they're doing very nicely is as zone transitions, is they swap into making a 2-wide box. As you can see here, Malibuca is making a 2-wide box. They have more opportunities to go for a refresh. Again, this is pretty much the same amount of mats as a 1-wide box, but it means that they get a lot more opportunity for kills. Just like this, a couple of teams fighting on low ground, a couple of teams hammered front side, and then tried to go for a refresh, and they're able to capitalize on that just because they've got more walls on the other teams. The one thing with these guys, and that's the reason they're so good and they've won the placement cup already, is the fact they don't go ahead and just keep on sticking to the same place. They don't try to do, like, let's say, centered in trios, where you just sit on low ground the entire time and would never even look up for height. They start fighting a team here on low ground. Obviously, Spanish players are really good ping, aren't able to take their walls, so they go ahead and back off it, realize they're getting cut off on low ground, take the time to go ahead and splash up, and then they go ahead and elevate off low ground, start looking up at height, and immediately there you can see DestinysJesus sees wood on height. Whenever you see that, you should pretty much always go for height. It's a very free opportunity, especially because how much refreshes they've got on mid ground in this game. So they box up like this, wood on height, doesn't need to call it, that is it solo. They just know they're going to go for it at this point. Shockwaves up, scuffs it a little bit, gets a little bit of a bug with the aerial perk, and then goes ahead and gets above this guy. He takes a bad trade, but lucky enough he just gets it over the top. And then now him and Malibuca up on height, and they pretty much won this game from this point. Now we get into this final position here. It's a 2v2 versus Nebs and Pink, obviously a new duo as well on low ground. And how do these guys on height capitalize on it? And first thing is that I haven't seen teams do it in a very long time. I'm pretty sure the last time I saw a team actually do this in a comp game was like the X2 twins on chapter 1 in the old trios. And it's to go ahead and suffocate the team on low ground. You can see there he places a whole load of cones on top of them, basically forces them to go an awkward way. A lot of times you'd actually used to be able to wipe out a team just by blocking them off on a mountain on zones like this, and you can see basically forces Pink and Nebs into having to make a shockwave hammer play, which actually goes wrong for them. As you can see, Pink goes out that way into Storm, and Nebs goes out that way. Pink's completely isolated, Malibuca's on height. The issue is here, Thomas actually makes a mistake and he doesn't block off his wall. He takes an angel with Nebs, obviously got crazy aim, actually wins that 1v1. However, Malibuca on high ground with the decent amount of mats, you know he's going to win this. Takes out Pink since he's got no mats in front side of Storm. Realizes here that Nebs is back playing in Storm. Doesn't even take the chance of trying to play the 1v out for too long. He realizes he has to come in from Storm. And as he's coming in from Storm, there's no way he's going to be looking for a counter pump. So Malibuca just drops down, it's a nice timing shot. And Nebs goes down to Storm. Basically a perfectly played game from these guys. And it's pretty obvious why they won the Placement Cup and why they're one of the favourites this season.